Did I forget to mention he performs at the St. Louis Philharmonic Orchestra? Make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the Drums and Rubs channel there. Click on the subscribe button down at the bottom. Also, make sure you paradiddle on that like button. This podcast is sponsored by Battle Ready Bombarda Rum, makers of dark Caribbean rum. Go check them out at shopbombardarum.com. Also by Embroidery and So More. Let's get behind our drums and let's start swinging some sticks. Adam, thanks for joining me. Like we were just talking there just a little bit in the our little pre-show, pre-gaming is our connection, and I have to really thank Kelly Ray Tubbs there for connecting us, one of our past guests, and I also refer to all of our guests as a part of the alums, Drums and Rums alums, right? Can't say that 10 times fast, right? And that's kind of one of the cool things about that little bit of the community, referring other guests, referring other people, and just connecting, and you've been drumming for a long time, and just, that community as abroad. So welcome to the podcast, Adam Tevlin.
Oh, thank you so much, Paul. It's a pleasure. And it's an honor actually to be on the show, and happy to share whatever I can to help any drummer out there. And that's what we're all into this together. And, if we can just touch one person, as Kelly said on my show, just one person and helping that person elevate themselves to the next level of drumming, we've done something good. So Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And that's, reading some of the, your information and your bio, and you've got a long life journey of drumming, and so you've got over 100 years in your family in drumming, so that's a pretty big number. So
yeah, let's start there.
Yes.
So okay, so in the introduction to the program I just released a month ago, Learning to Drum, I wanted to pay homage to all my family members from every generation going back over 100 years, which it started out with my great-grandfather, William Tunzi. And he was a German, from German immigrants. So he was born, he was born in the U.S. His dad was not born in the U.S. So he's kind of first generation German. And then his wife, of course, is fully second generation German. So they come from a German family, my mom's side of the family, that is. And William Tunzi gave birth to 3 sons. And the first was Lee Tunzi, the second George Tunzi, and then the third, my uncle Gordon Tunzi. And these are all aside from my grandfather George, these are my great uncles. So, I'm not saying we come from a list of Buddy Riches in our family, but they played drums. They enjoyed it. My great uncle Lee, and I can share some pictures with you if you'd like, of him playing with the U.S. Army band back in World War II. So, and then after that, he toured around with some big bands and things. And that had to kind of all come to an end when he gave birth to his first daughter, who was Down syndrome. And obviously he wanted to stay home and take care of the family that way. So, he's been one of the most influential people. George, I did not get to talk to, which is my grandfather on my mom's side. And the reason why is because he passed when I was 2. And then my uncle Gordon, he was the most educated. And my uncle Lee always told me to go talk to him. But I tried to talk to him. And he's like, well, I played paradiddles on this side of this cuckoo clock, and it wore a little indentation over the time and stuff. But he was actually trained, but my uncle Lee was self-taught. He didn't even know how to read music.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so one day in the Army band, he tells me the story about how this one piano player came up to him and said, hey, you want to know what you're doing on that ride cymbal? So he writes it out, and he writes it out as the dotted eighth 16th pattern plus a quarter note. And that's technically not the correct way. And he even mentions that the piano player says, this isn't the correct way to write it, but this is how it's written. But you're supposed to play it as a swing pattern, so technically it's, obviously a triple eighth note, triple eighth note rest, triple eighth note plus a quarter note, repeated over and over. So that was interesting. He also told me about, this is my great uncle Lee, told me about feathering the bass drum, which is a very important rule in not only big band jazz, but also just any type of music genre that you can think of. I mean, being able to control the volume of your bass drum. And I see a lot of players out there, and I don't say this is right or wrong or anything, but they bury the beater into the head of the bass drum every time.
Right.
And there's necessary points for that, at least for my playing, but I can't do that every time because I want different sounds out of that. So sometimes feathering that bass drum gives you that, and this is what he said to me, my great uncle Lee said, a beat is always best felt and not heard.
Yep.
And that just rang into my head. And so when I started playing jazz in college, these things carried over, and here I am, just four on the floor, but feathering it, and that kind of set the precedent of what happens, else in your playing, whether it be, if you're playing, fast or slow jazz, it doesn't matter. But that little bass, that little, foundation kind of pushes the band a little bit more. And that's what he was trying to tell me. And he said that he likes Gene Krupa over Buddy Rich any day. And I was like, wait a minute, Buddy Rich. Hey, he goes, Adam, the reason why I say that is because Gene was a showman. He was a showman and he sold the crowd. As a matter of fact, I think there's a Gene Krupa quote. He says, I'll never play a drum solo that you can't dance to. And that makes sense, and so he plays for the crowd. Buddy Rich is his own reality within itself that nobody can kind of par up to, but everybody appreciated. So I personally don't think it's a right or wrong or better or good, but my Uncle Lee liked him a lot, and I stuck with that and studied a lot of these old jazz drummers, especially with, my heroes and who they looked up to. So we can talk about later, yep. But from those three sons, okay, George, Lee, and Gordon came birth to my mom, and then my Uncle Don, who I went to when I was 10 years old. And I've had a passion about drums for a very long time. As a matter of fact, when my mom divorced my biological father when I was, I guess, about 2, we moved back in with my grandmother. And at that time, George was gone at that time. And, but they would have rehearsals, music rehearsals. My uncles would have music rehearsals over at the house. And that was my first exposure to what a drum set would look like. And I was just kind of amazed at all the things. And I'm a small guy, so when you get up to that really big drum kit, you feel like it's just an Empire State Building. And you tap on the head, you don't want to mess anything up, and you're just fascinated with the sound. So, excuse me. So I was always fascinated. And then when I was 5, my parents gave me, my mom remarried, and this is the dad I know today, but gave me a Muppets drum set. And it was paper heads and everything like that. And now Christmas happens, 2 months before my 6th birthday. I'm 5, 6th birthday happens. I have some friends over, and what they ended up doing was banging on the drum set so much it broke all the heads. And so I cried on my birthday. Oh, so I can cry if I want to, right?
So, so go ahead. So, all right. So let's pause there because I have a major issue with not what you said, but what happened, because I just had this conversation with another person just this past weekend, and he plays guitar, but he makes he's part of a company that makes drums or cajones. And I said, all right, so as a guitar player, why is it that if you come to somebody's house or whatever a guitarist's house, everybody respects the guitar. You don't touch the guitar. But when you come to a drummer's house and people see the drum set, that they just is like it's an open invitation. You don't even have to ask, and people are jumping all over it. So I feel your 60-year-old pain there. I don't know why it always seems to be just, oh hey, I can bang and make noise, and it's I had to start putting a sheet over my drums in my house whenever we have a party and whether there's kids or it's like. what's up with that? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So unfortunately I didn't get another drum set until I was 12.
Mm.
So
Oh wow.
I still had the desire to play the drums. As a matter of fact, when I was 8 years old, fast forward a little bit, into third grade, which nowadays they don't do this anymore, which is unfortunate, but beginning band actually started in third or fourth grade. And at least here in St. Louis, it's now sixth or seventh grade, which is unfortunate. I think kids should be involved as early as they can with any type of music education. So that given said, I remember a classmate of mine had his little snare drum case, and he was walking home from school, and so was I. And I was like, dude, can you like just bust that out and just let me hear the drum? Can I just hear the drum? And he says, they're still auditioning or trying out, musicians if you want to join the grade school band. I was like, yeah, man, I'd love to. So he got out the drum and he played a press roll, and I was just like amazed at the sound. It just, something attracted me to it. And I wanted to do that. I wanted to be able to do that. So beginning band auditions happened again in fourth grade. And I went up to Mr. Oliver, which eventually became my first band director. But this is fourth grade. And he says, we have 20 drummers here. Not everybody's going to make it. So right now, think about what other instrument that you want to play. So I'm thinking to myself, wow, well, I don't know if I play one. I don't want to play the flute. Nothing against flute. Excuse me. I don't want to play trumpet. What about clarinet? Maybe I can play clarinet. So I went home to my parents and I said, hey, I want to play clarinet. And they were like, you want to play clarinet? What made you decide this? Well, because I want to play drums, and I won't make the drums, I don't think. And I didn't try. I just told them I want to play clarinet. And so I figured I'd start with clarinet and then go to the drums. They said, and I love my parents. They've always gave me the great reality check of life, in any situation. And they say, no, you go play the drums.
Awesome.
So at that point, unfortunately, I didn't go back to that band director. I didn't know how to get in touch with them. Obviously, we're talking, mid 80s. Right. And, so when I was 10, I went up to my uncle, Don Tunzi, which is my grandfather's boy. Right. And he played drums, and he was a self-taught player, but I went up to him with an ice cream bucket, a gallon ice cream bucket that was empty and cleared out. And my parents like to save them for, like food refuge and from the sink and stuff. So
we're about the same age, so I get you.
Yeah, good. Yeah. So, and then I had a broken pair or a dowel rod from a kite that I broke in half to make drumsticks. And these are like, I don't know, an eighth of an inch, thick dowel rod. And so I went up to my Uncle Don, and he's watching TV with my parents, hanging out, I said, Don, I want to learn something on the drums. He says, you serious? I said, absolutely. I want to learn how to play the drums. And I don't have any drum teacher. I don't know even where to begin for a drum teacher. And so he said, well, this is how we hold the sticks. And he held them traditionally. And they said, this is how I was taught by your Uncle Lee when he taught me. And he started going right, left, right, around the ice cream bucket. Progressively got that fast. I'll demonstrate it here. But because the ice cream bucket didn't have a bounce or anything like that, we kept going. When he got about that speed, I was like, wow, that's so fast. Now, you and I know that that's not that fast, but he slowed back down. And he says, when you master that, come talk to me. And I'm like, so I tried that, and this didn't work out. So I went to this because everybody I saw is drumming matched. And so I'm going to do it that way. And I couldn't get that right, left fast enough. And so there's my 100 years of family history from my great grandfather now to me. And I had the opportunity. I had a friend up the street who was 3 years older. So he was a freshman in high school. And I was in seventh grade, and the seventh grade started at 9 o'clock and the high school started at 8. Well, what happened in the high school, and it's just down the street from my junior high, graduated from Jennings. So I went to Jennings Junior High at that time. And what happened was their beginning band with fourth and third graders started at 8. And he came to me and he said, Adam, I'm seeing people in the hallway with all these drum pads and sticks and stuff. And I know you're really interested in the drums. Do you want to come talk to the band director? I was so nervous, and I was 12 years old. So I was 12 years old, and I'm going to be playing with, 8, 9, maybe 10-year-olds, which is
Right.
okay. I don't care. So I did one day go up to the band director, Mr. Oliver, as I said, future band director. And I said, I want to learn how to play. My parents can't afford the drum lessons. Some places don't take anybody less than, anybody under, 13 or
Right.
14 years of age, some nonsense like that. So he says, okay, show up on this day and bring your sticks and pad, and we'll see what you got. And he eventually wanted me to get the Gladstone pad because that's what we all use. So I did that. And that's my start and really at drum education, learning how to play drums, because Mr. Oliver actually was third best in the state of Missouri for rudimental drummers. And back in that time, in the 60s and the 50s and the 40s, prior to that even, you had rudimental competitions. And believe it or not, Mr. Oliver had a whip-like motion molar, a lot of molar stuff, right? But you start at your rudiment in the up position like this, and boom, boom, but that's how they played back then. And so really that's kind of how I started really to get into the educational part of drums, because I was just tinkering on a pad for the first couple of years from 10 until 12. And so anyway.
Hey, so and again, there's always that interesting to learn everybody's spark or how they got to, to getting into drums. And again, your family, and again, that's very helpful because we all know drums definitely have a certain place with children growing up and playing, because it is mostly frowned upon only, for quite a few reasons. It's a lot louder. Now, again, the wind, instruments you talked about, the clarinet and the trumpet. Yeah, as we all know, because we all were, like I said, I think we're about close to the same age. We all grew up, your first instrument you learned in music class was the recorder, right? And we all, if you're, and again, probably just like any instrument, when you're starting out, everyone is terrible, right? A lot of bad, there's not music yet, it's just noise, right?
Right.
And then on top of it, it's loud, the drums, and there's a lot of stuff to carry. And I had a very similar story. There was in elementary school, I played the snare, and I think it was Wednesday, and again, you got this big box you're carrying in, and I lived in New Jersey at the time, the snow and so forth. So yeah, there was definitely as opposed to just carrying the little flute case and or clarinet case, and it's a
yeah, every time it's like I picked the wrong instrument, but no regrets. I mean, that's kind of comes with the territory with playing drums, having to cart all that stuff around. I feel sorry for the percussionists, because I'm in the union local here, 197. And, a lot of times when we do these union gigs, they'll have to bring their own timpani or their own marimba or xylophone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I'm just drum set. So I put on the union drum set only, so I'm used to that,
Yeah. Transporting a drum set is, in the term, when you put it in perspective too, right? A marimba, it's like, okay, yeah, I guess it's not too bad because you don't have it where you can break it down to make it smaller, right? So that's pretty cool. So yeah, some of your as we're going to come back around to, as you mentioned, there's some of your drum heroes there. So I think what was interesting was you mentioned Will Calhoun, right? So in Living Color, right?
Right.
Very, I graduated high school in 92, so that kind of gives you a frame of reference. And I remember all that time frame, the music that was coming out, and in Living Color was just, I think they're underrated. And I think people that know who they are were like that band, everybody from Vernon and Glover, yeah.
Yep. Danny Glover or Corey Glover, sorry.
Yeah. Which did you know he was in Platoon?
Yes, I did. Okay. He was a very young kid.
Yes.
In Platoon. As a matter of fact, how he got that role, I think he was like 14 or something. He was very young. And Oliver Stone said, "Oh, he'll pass for 18," or I think there's something to that effect. But yeah, there's a very small clip, and Johnny Depp was in it too. And
right, yeah.
And and he didn't have a real big role, but obviously his presence was there. A lot of good actors, and a lot of that was a really good movie.
Yeah,
that was one of the game-changing moment movies that I saw in high school with my dad,
Yeah.
you know, and it really kind of gives you a glimpse in reality, because obviously Oliver Stone was in Vietnam and served for a country and stuff. So, yeah, absolutely. And you were talking about that time era with Will Calhoun. So at night, a lot of times when I go to bed, you know, I'm 12 years old or whatever. And I heard this song, and they always, you know, sometimes they'll bust a new or break a new song out, new single or whatever. So I heard, gotta go down, gotta go. And I was like, who is this? Who is this? You know? So I finally see the video on MTV when they played videos, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, holy cow. This is like one of the first, if not the first, African-American rock bands out there, and they're killing it.
Yeah.
This is how rock should sound, you know? Because what happened in that cut, Cult of Personality, and that's what debuted, was Cult of Personality, on the chorus, neon lights, right? He does the, and another one was, you know, and I'm like 30 seconds and triplet 16 notes. And I'm like, holy cow, this is, you know, because at that time it was like, you know, Warrant, she's my cherry pie, right? And it's just boom. And there's nothing wrong with that. The Tommy Lee, the glam and all that. There's nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, it took me a lot longer to appreciate that type of drumming, realizing how hard and physically demanding it is to keep that energy going.
Right.
But when I saw Will Calhoun play in the video of you know, Cult of Personality, I noticed how much control he had over what he was doing. Okay, so, and that was around 12 or 13. And my first cover song that I learned, I was so determined, it was Cult of Personality. And being able to pick up, I didn't know I could pick up ghost notes and put them on the hi-hat until I heard that song. I'm like, wow, that's a new flavor, you know? And so now I'm like, boom, you know, and it's like, wow, that just opened up my doors there.
Yeah. And that goes back to what you said about your, was it your uncle or great uncle? About the notes that aren't played or heard, but not, or played.
Felt and not heard.
Felt.
Yeah, right. A best beat is felt and not heard, you know. Right. Unless you have an awesome fill like in Cult of Personality, you want to definitely bring that out. Another great fill episode, of course, is Kenny Aronoff with, you know, Jack and Diane. I think that's the song, right?
Yeah.
Boom, boom. Okay. Boom. Right. So very simple fill. It doesn't have to be a lot of notes, you know.
But it's just,
you know,
it's that rock
so iconic. Right, it's so iconic, you know. Yeah. Fast forward as far as drumming history or heroes, fast forward to when I was 14. I was about 13, 14. So my band director, Jerry Oliver, said, hey, look, if you take lessons from this guy who just graduated from high school, Dan Lubert, over the summer, I'll let you into varsity band. I said, well, I'm not even in high school. I'll be in 8th grade. He goes, that's okay. If you're good enough, I'll let you in. I was like, well, what about my class? I start at, he says, I've already worked it out with the junior high, so I can get you in. Wow. I'm like, cool. So I take lessons with Dan Lubert. And he goes back to the pillow because he noticed my rolls. And he puts a pillow in my lap. And he goes, let's see what you can do. And it's back to that same concept, what my Uncle Don told me. And at that time, I'm 13 years old. So my muscles obviously are developing differently, right? It's getting a little bit like, wow, I didn't know I could do that, you know, and just because a year ago, I wasn't able to do that, you know?
Right.
And so this is the best time, you know, around 13, 14, when your body starts to change and mature, is to get those muscle memory movements in place. He says, do you got a little time extra after one lesson? I said, yeah. He says, I want you to come up to my room and I want you to listen to this band I think you might like. So I'm like, okay. So I go up to his room and he puts on the record player because it's a record. Okay. and it goes, I'm like, who are these guys? The Rush. And I was like, Rush? That's the name of the band, Rush? Yeah. You haven't heard of them? No. What? Yeah. So we go crazy over it. And after that, Tom Sawyer, he showed me Limelight. And I said, I got to get this album. Moving Pictures was my first album. And so Will Calhoun first, then Neil Peart second were my first two drumming heroes that, and after that, I just wanted to learn Rush tunes. And that's almost a dangerous area when you get too wrapped up into your drumming hero or heroes, is you want to try to sound like them and do everything like them. So
right, as opposed to being, your own sound and your right. And learning other things. Cause that I could see how, it could be very dangerous where you don't progress. You're progressing, but very linear as opposed to other things that are out there, right? And
that's right.
And I grew up a lot on rock music, and I think that's why I'm trying. And it's much difficult later in life to open yourself up to new music and new things, and trying to say, okay, well, a little bit more about blues or this or that, and it's a different style and it's different, so forth. But that's Will, I missed them. They just played here about a month or two ago here down in South Florida, and I missed them. And I reach out to them on Instagram. I really have. I just go after anybody and just shoot messages and try to get people, they're interested to come on, and you never respond. But
that's all right.
Maybe again. So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say Dom's very receptive to doing these things, and I had him on my show, obviously, as you know, and but I mean, some people are just way too busy, and some people, I know, like there's another podcast out there, and he was trying to peg down a drummer for I don't know, almost a year. And he finally got him on the show. So just keep knocking on the door and it'll happen, is the way I feel about it. So as far as drumming heroes, that did branch out because when my family, now, mind you, I also have another grandfather on my biological side, the father side of the family, that, because I never met my dad's dad, okay? But my biological father's parents were still around and still treated me as a grandson and stuff, which was really nice. They were very nice. He even treated my sister, who was born from my new set of parents, as a grandchild of their own. That's pretty cool. But he played drums. His name is Bryce Albright, and he played drums, and he noticed that I was getting serious with the drums around 14, 15. He hands me this jazz tape of all these jazz drummers. And he says, I took a lot for me to go and order this thing on special order, so I want you to at least listen to it once and say, okay. So at the end, it said Gene Krupa, Buddy Rich drum battle. So I fast forward to the drum battle because I wanted to hear that first,
Yeah, right.
And it blew my mind, of course. And I'm not seeing these people play today and age.
Oh,
you have anything that you can pull off the internet. And I'm telling kids, you need to go and absorb all this information out there. And they're like, no, I didn't see the video. I'm like, so, but anyway, so I listened to it over and over and over again. And it was, it had Max Roach on there, had Thigpen, just so many, Kenny Clark. I mean, just all these great drummers. It was a drummer tape, and it took some of the best recordings of these drummers and compiled it on a cassette tape. And that really opened. I didn't care for jazz because maybe I didn't understand it. All I went was, Neil Peart, right? And so I saw the Buddy Rich Memorial Scholarship video with Neil Peart on it. And at that time, I was saying Neil Peart, right?
Yeah, like everybody.
Until Kathy Rich comes out, ladies and gentlemen, Neil Peart. And so I go to Fred Pierce's drum shop like the next couple of days after, which is our local drum shop here. And I said, is it Peart or Peart? Peart. And they're like, so whatever. But I saw him play, and I realized for the first time with that Buddy Rich band, he did a great job, but I knew he was out of his element. And I knew that what created Neil Peart was not only his own ingenious creativity, the concepts he came up with, the lyrics, the beautiful lyrics he'd written, but also the two other musicians that made him who he is. You can't replace Neil Peart and Rush, just like you couldn't replace John Bonham and Led Zeppelin. It was that chemistry that could not be duplicated. And I realized for the first time in my life, as Neil Peart being a demigod to now, he's a human being like you and me.
Right.
He laughs, cries, all that stuff. And ironically, just shortly after that, he went and sought lessons with Freddie Gruber. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He obviously had pioneered a lot of other great drummers, Dave Weckl, Daniel Glass, Bruce Becker. Bruce Becker was a really long-time student of his. And Freddie was that one of those, old-time guys that was still alive, and you better get it while you can before he moves on, So I got in after that. Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa, Steve Gadd, Dave Weckl, Vinnie Colaiuta, it's Marvin Schmitty Smith, Steve Smith, and it all really had to do with those Buddy Rich Memorial Scholarship videos that Kathy had put on for the rest of the drummers. And it's one of those learning tools that back in my day, we had word of mouth, we had VHS tapes, and local drum teachers. And you're very fortunate if you found a good local drum teacher. Some were misinformed to the point to where they spend 6 months on one song and never get anywhere. And whatever it is, what it is. But that really opened my door up in probably my mid to late high school years of trying to listen to as many different drummers as I can. And I couldn't afford these VHS tapes, so I had to go to the drum store to watch them, Go ahead.
So yeah, and that's I think a really good segue there. As you said, that the opportunity to get your hands on or to talk to or get lessons from others, is what we wanted to talk about, was the foundation for learning to drum, right? The website.
Right.
And I really think it's great because, I get that there's folks that need to make a living, whether it's however it may be, right? Making, money teaching, and that's, again, it's part of it, but I think the way, and I'll let you kind of expound more on, what learning to drum is all about, but is kind of that foundation. You went back to, here's what I was like trying to learn as a kid, and given that opportunity. And I think it's a really great, a great thing that you're doing to try to get people into it, and a zero as they call it, right? Zero barrier to entry. So,
ground zero to beyond. Yeah. So okay. So learning to drum, originally, I was encouraged. I was in a punk band when I was living in San Diego back in, I just joined them in 2001. Shortly after that 9/11 happened. So there was a lot of things that were changing. But it was a great band that I was with, for a couple of years. And, the bass player, Steve Gallup, he would keep telling me, man, you need to start giving lessons on Skype. You started to get lessons on Skype. I said, Skype, man, I can't even talk to my friends clearly on Skype, let alone see a video without them cutting out. And there's no way I'd be able to teach online lessons that way. He says, well, when you get to be able to do that, that's the wave of the future. And I was like, okay. He has a really good forward thinking mind, because when YouTube came out, he says, okay, you have no excuse. Start creating videos. And then at that time, an HD, 720 camera would be about $700-800.
Right.
And that's something I've always been, limited because of income. It's just been, I work my butt off. I do whatever I can, but at the end of the day, you can only do so much. But anyway, so that had materialized, and around 2014, 2015, I had just scored my second film with Lindenwood University. I scored the silent film Joan of Arc, or La Passion de Joan d'Arc, and I had some fundage from that, and obviously I had the studio built, and I had some companies help me out and threw in supplies at no additional charge, and so I started building the studio. And about that time, I was in communication with Aquarian Drumheads, and pitched the show to Roy Burns, and I had my 7-year-old son with me for security purposes, okay, because I was pretty nervous, but I did. I pitched it to him. I told him what it's about. And really what it is, you have all kinds of resources out there. There's the more, the merrier. What I found as a trend is these shows that have a hodgepodge of videos, which either A, entices you to want to watch more of that so you can subscribe or pay the subscription fee, or whatever the case is. But it's like, here's this drum fill of the day, or here's this drum beat of the day, or here's 5 beats that every drummer should know,
Right.
or this is what you don't do in drumming, and you have all these elaborate thumbnails and stuff. And I thought to myself, I said, well, if I was starting out in the drums, if I were 10 years old with that thirst, I wouldn't know where to begin. Even some of the platforms out there saying, I'm going to take you from beginning, don't, in my opinion, really deliver all the value that you can deliver, which when I started, the first episode, it was just about what to go buy. Should you buy a drum or a drum pad?
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, what kind of sticks to buy, and what kind of practice pad to buy. And then we also went into the history of like the sticks. And I went to these old catalogs from the 20s and 30s and stuff. And hey, this is what drumsticks looked like back then. Now with today's technology, we have pitch paired matching. I'm an endorser of Vic drumsticks and mallets, but they have their own measures, and other companies have really good measures out there to ensure really good quality drumsticks. I don't ever have to roll them on a table anymore, really too much. I'm sure you remember us doing that back in the day, of always having to roll your drumsticks out to make sure they're not warped.
Right.
So, so really, and then the second episode, I talk about how to hold the sticks, of course, and the different grips, not just here's my way of holding the sticks. Here are all the different grips that are out there and why. And we talk about the old Basil grip, where the thumbs are tucked down, the Basil Switzerland, and how they had that whipping like motion, which carried over into Sanford A. Moeller, and all these revolutionary Civil War drummers were learned from these immigrants that came over from Europe, So I'm wondering if, aside from my great grandfather, did his dad play drums or his dad's dad? What got him into playing? Unfortunately, I won't ever be able to go back and ask him or anything like that. But,
right.
It's just one of those things that I really wanted to put on a product there that people can kind of take and just go with it. And then after that, they can go learn this fill or that fill. And 52 weeks in a season. So every week, everybody gets a new episode. And we just progress from there. We eventually learn how to read music. By the end of the season, you'll have an advanced, intermediate to advanced level of reading drum music, as well as 14 out of the 40 international PAS rudiments.
Oh, very cool. And now so you have a co-host with you. Is that a permanent thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so Kai, my son Kai. Well, he wanted to learn how to play drums, and excuse me there.
Yeah.
And so I said, yeah, that's great. Let's learn this the right way. And before that, I've showed him some drum beats. I've showed him a couple of rudiments, and it's kind of like one of those things. And you'll see it next week, actually, in the third episode, which is another 2 parts. I have another guest coming on, and at that point, Kai's kind of, I don't know if I want to do this every time. Because as you know, it's a lot of hard work. Sometimes you have to do retakes, and you're talking in front of a camera,
right,
which is weird, Yeah. So after the third episode, he comes back on a couple more times, so we can see how he's doing and stuff. But really, I'm solo on episode 4 going forward. I have some more guests come on throughout the time, but really, after episode 3, it's just you and I and the drum pad and learning how to do rudiments and reading music.
And I really liked that, and as well, I'm father of 2 boys, and neither 2 of them are interested in even the drums, and even touching them. Whereas every other kid that came over wanted to bang on them. But there was that part in I don't know if it was which episode it was, but it was some recent there, and it may have been the first episode, where you guys were talking about kind of. There was no push, and just let them, and he told you that, you never really, it just kind of happened naturally, which is what which is a great thing, right? He just kind of found it on his own, or had the interest on his own too. So, so very, very cool. So learningtodrum.com, episode 2, part 2 just dropped yesterday, October 10th. Was that coincidence that it was also National Hug a Drummer Day, or?
Well, no. Every Sunday at 7 p.m. Central, I release a new episode. And it happened to fall on Hug a Drummer Day, which I loved. And so obviously I did something on my own page. And people can go to facebook.com/learning to drum. over 4,800 followers, and you get the kind of latest, greatest of what's going on with learning the drum, but also little other posts that's going to help people advance themselves. Like Rick Latham just had a birthday. Did you know about advanced funk studies, by the way? Well, here's this great funk drumming book that is one of the icon books that every drummer should have in the library, that type of thing. And so yeah, I mean, it's a very good, it's an educational platform basically that anybody can come to.
No, that's great. And to be able to have a place that people can come and learn from people that really know what they're talking about, as opposed to some that may not have it. And you have that education background at Linwood. Did I say it right?
Yeah, Lindenwood. Yeah, university.
Right,
yeah, got my bachelor's. Yeah.
Right. So, it's just interesting now. So you perform with the St. Louis Philharmonic, and what is that like? So I guess you talk about if you're in a band and having to split the the door, right? With your band, that's not everyone's not getting a whole lot of money on but right.
Right.
How many people are in the orchestra that you're
gosh. Well, it depends, because I know when there's certain gigs that we do that have to be just strictly union for union reasons,
right?
And so obviously we're like 60 to 70 people, but we can be like up to 100 or a little over 100, just depending on what we're with. Sometimes we'll even bring in a choir. That may be from a school, and we kind of join forces and we sing, Beethoven's Ninth, or we play Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, which requires a chorus, the Hallelujah, or not, the Ode to Joy chorus. So yeah, I mean, what it's like is, when you're in a small group, obviously you're closer together. Let's say a 3-piece, you have more area to fill, right? But with an orchestra, obviously you have to play what's written, unless we're doing a pops tune and I'm on drum set, then those charts become a little bit more, loose, and I get to kind of embellish a little bit, or kind of do my own thing. But yeah, it's being in an orchestra is a very precise, and it's not stiff playing. It's just, you have to be there and you have to play what's there, and you'll be counting. And you'll be counting, and you'll be counting for one little triangle note, and then you sit back down and you count some more. That's the worst case scenario. I remember one piece I played, I think it was some Mahler piece or whatever. I had one tam-tam note at the very end. And that was it. And I was done for the night,
So how do you, if you're, I guess, keep the focus or again, to pay attention to your one triangle hit after maybe 3 minutes worth of music coming on. And I guess, that's an important thing you're keeping up and not losing concentration and staying focused on, all right, my part's coming up or whatever. So as opposed to being part of the whole piece, right?
Yeah.
And how is that something? Because I saw one of the videos that you were playing, and I'm probably using the wrong, or, probably technical term, but you're playing the cymbals, right, and there was a certain part and coming, and then obviously I'm watching it, listening to the music, and I could feel it building up. I'm like, oh, here it comes, and not to get too anxious about jumping the gun or whatever, but I guess that's something, like as you mentioned, is making sure you're reading along with everyone else until you get to that part. So
yeah, absolutely. It's an extreme measure of concentration, but then you also got to think about the extreme concentration that you have to do to keep steady time.
Right.
And when I was young and I started playing, my time would be like this, or I might want to throw in a fill here, wherever I want. And it's like, that's not musical phrasing, as I learned later down the road. But, whether if you're playing with a rock band or a bar band, as you said, split the door, or an orchestra or jazz group or anything like that, there's always a level of concentration. It's just as far as technique purposes, there's different approaches. Mm-hmm. So fortunately, I get to play drum set with the orchestra, which is I love doing that. And what that's like is much different than a 3-piece band, as I was talking about earlier. So I kind of equate it to, if you ever seen the old Ben-Hur, and the 10-horse chariots and all that stuff. And they're just, that's kind of how it feels sometimes playing drum set with the orchestra. And you're with that conductor, and that conductor's with you. So there's an agreement that you both have of how that pocket should develop. And there's a pocket, right? Even in the orchestra. And so I'm with the brass and the low basses, a lot of times. And the ones that lag behind or drag me back are the strings. So I'm more on top, maybe even pushing ahead, not speeding up, but just a little bit more on top of the beat. So it gets those strings to kind of glue onto me a little bit better. So it's not an easy thing to do. It's an acquired thing. I mean, I know first time doing it was very intimidating, back when I was in college. And, but it's the most funnest thing that I can ever do, really, is play drum set with the orchestra. That's amazing.
Oh yeah, like you said, try to keep time, right, or everybody in time, and again, as I always say, you've got to follow the drummer, but the drummer also has to be doing their thing too. So that's yeah, that's got to be incredible. And but yeah, that was I said some of the videos there. Yeah, I said you're playing the drum kit, and then other parts you're playing different percussion items and so on there. So you mentioned the Adam, you're in San Diego for a little bit. So you're also were in a band that got a Guinness Book of World Record also.
Okay, so yeah. Liquid Blue, and technically I've never really signed on any contract other than the contract that they handed me as far as being a player for their band. Okay. I mean, every professional band out there has an agreement for their members. At least from what I'm familiar with, and there should be, because there's an expectation from both sides of the fence. I've been in bands to where, this is way back, but the leader of the band or the guy who's, holding the band, I wouldn't see him. He would take the money and I wouldn't see him after the gig. And I was like, where's my pay? And, so I've had instances like that. So you always, whenever you're working with somebody, obviously like, a small group or a jam band or whatever, you don't have to really do that. But if you're doing something commercial like Liquid Blue, which yes, is the most traveled band in the world, according to the Guinness Book of World Records, they've been going on for, I think 1990. Well, where was the inception? I think 1996, I think, when they were, because they were just celebrating their 20th anniversary, I think, or no, their 10th anniversary in 2006 when I left San Diego, because that's the reason why I left the band. I decided to move back to St. Louis. So expensive in San Diego, but I played with them. That was an interesting group, and they had a click track in my ear, and they had songs queued up on their computer. So whatever song I didn't know what song was going to be happening next. I might get a solid from one of the band members saying, "Hey, we're doing whatever," and I'm like, okay, and we played anything from Frank Sinatra all the way up to Megadeth, was it Masters of Destruction or
Symphony of Destruction?
Symphony of Destruction. That's it. Tells you how much of a metalhead I am. But we played it all, and you had to know all those tunes. And what got me that gig is I charted out their original tunes. They also have an original album out at that time. And I beat out, it's funny because I talked to him over the phone about it. I was asking him about this contract that I just got from Liquid Blue. And he said, wait a minute. Now, this guy's name is Greg Gerson. You ever heard of Greg Gerson? He was one of the original drummers for Billy Idol. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Gregg Gerson, Gerson, Greg Gerson, and very nice guy, because I contacted him. I said, hey, I auditioned for this band called Liquid Blue. They gave me this contract. What should I expect? It's my first contract, right? And he's like, wait a minute, you just auditioned? Here's my number. Call me. So I call him, and he's like, look, I just auditioned for that band, and I lost from some guy charting out tunes. Was that you? And I'm like, yeah. So I said, I got
awkward.
I said, I'm sorry. Yeah. I said, I'm sorry. No, but what I ended up doing was buying him dinner that night or shortly after that, because I really wanted to pick his brain. I was like, holy cow, Billy Idol's drummer. I don't care about that gig. I want to pick your brain. So we went out for
Yeah.
sushi and ate a bunch of sushi. And he told me about kind of what contracts are about, what to expect. He said I wouldn't sign anything that blah, 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 et
Mm.
cetera. So I'm like, cool. This is 60-day out. I mean, if you ever needed to get out for any reason, you'd have to give them a 60-day notice.
Mm.
And it was a contractual agreement, and they get, 1099 at the end of the year, that type of thing. So.
Right. No, it's good. Yeah, yeah. Those are those little things that you can get into the music, you learn the music, and then like you always hear some sad, unfortunate stories that people don't know what they're getting themselves into, and then sign away
Right.
things, and I don't know. Yeah. Well, anyway, it sucks,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But
You got to know that, like I said, you have to be your own business person. You
yeah,
have to be your own web
right.
developer, your own
Yeah,
everything. It's now being a professional musician. It requires so much out of your root, what you would normally do as far as just practicing and
right,
gigging and everything like that.
right.
There's a lot more to it. So there's a couple other bands I did play with in San Diego. One is Matthew Stewart,
Mm.
one of the best songwriters I've ever worked with. You can go to matthewstewart.com, I'm sure. Just to hear his music, it's just awesome music. I think you would really like it a lot. It's just, like how Peter Gabriel, Steve Winwood,
Okay,
Genesis,
okay.
just good artists. This is one of those good artists that is kind of like, never kind of, for some reason, I'm surprised that it didn't take off.
Mm.
And then Stout, which is of course, band I was talking about earlier, the punk band,
Right,
and and things, which is another fun band. That was a fun band.
right.
All my students at the time, I want to learn how to play Travis Barker. I want Travis Barker, Travis Barker, Travis, and they're from San Diego, right?
Right.
182. So I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, let's learn this beat. Okay, let's learn that beat. But anyway, so yeah, I had a really good time. A lot of learning experiences in San Diego, just surviving, and making a living, and eventually opened up my own teaching studio towards the end of that, and had up to like 40 or 50 students, and that's a lot. Once it gets to about 50 students, you
Yeah.
could kind of,
Right.
it's really hard to devote all your undivided attention to every student's needs and stuff,
Yeah.
which I take a little bit of a different approach now with teaching. I don't, no, I'm not going to teach you this Tool song, or no, I'm not going to teach you this. It's not, I don't have a desire to go learn it. I don't have a desire to teach you. Tell me what you want to learn, and I can offer something to you,
Right.
and that's kind of where I'm at right now. I just,
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Is what have learned talking to many guests and those that may have come up through the drum corps, or has gone off to university and studied music, or continued to play in the corps in college, is giving people the tools, right? What's the analogy of you teach a man to fish, right? And it's great that you can learn a song or want to learn a song, but if you know the tools, the rudiments, these foundational stuff, or maybe then also here's an approach to how to learn to play other songs. And I think that's a pretty interesting topic in itself, is learning different techniques to learn and cover songs, right? Some charted out, or in others are repetitious and playing, or and so forth. But yeah, I think that's a good approach. Like teaching kids scales, and I know there's a lot of schools that are out there that teach kids how to play a song and perform, but yet they may not know chord structures and for guitars or so forth. But anyway,
right.
that's pretty. So, and this is interesting. So your gigging kit, or when you play live, you've got some vintage cymbals, right?
Yeah.
That's old. That's older than you, right? And older than us, I
Yeah.
guess, right? We said we're both.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I play only on pre-64 Zildjians when I play live. Now, in the kit back here, right here, I have a medium crash 18 from the 80s, but then I have your contemporary K-Custom and things like that. A pair of new beats that are contemporary. And this is the teaching kit. I usually have two kits when I have students in the studio, but since COVID and everything, I've been doing everything virtual. So I haven't had to have the other kit set up or anything like that. But over here on the wall is where I get the vintage cymbals and stuff. And some of them are from the 40s,
Wow.
50s. Most of them are from the early 60s. And you can tell the difference between the two. I mean, if I could had a better camera, I'd show you, but there's a difference in, like, I have two cymbals from the 60s. And do you want me to entice you? Want me to
Yeah,
indulge you there?
yeah,
Okay.
sure, yeah.
All right. So I'll show you what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so for those that are listening on the podcast, Adam's grabbing a couple cymbals here off of his cymbal tree. So,
I got so many cymbals. So, all right. So this one is from the 60s. You can obviously tell by the stamp. They have the three, and you can't see that too well, I know. But you can go online to resources. I even Reverb has a historical resource on how to date cymbals and stuff. But this obviously is from the 60s according to the stamp. But look at the hammering. You can tell, like, after 64, around 64, the demand was so great for Zildjian, they couldn't do this by hand anymore, so they started doing it by machine. And you can tell that this is done by machine, right?
Right. There's a little bit more precision, right?
It's all consistent with each other,
right.
Okay? So, and so that was the end of those handmade cymbals. You look up into this one. See if I can get this is a little darker cymbal, but well, maybe this side might. Well, no, that didn't do any better. But this, you can see that they have the same type of way of doing the hammering, but you can see that it's not as consistent, or the spacing is not as consistent.
Right.
Okay, so that's how I can tell that it's a handmade cymbal from Zildjian. Really, really nice cymbal. You know, and I test them. I just kind of, and I want to see what that does. And then I'll go and I'll play on the bell and, the ride part of this crash and all that stuff. But that's how I'm able to tell. And I love them. My great uncle Lee always said to me, play Zildjian. Don't play any other brand but Zildjian or Zilco. And I don't know if you remember Zilco, but that was kind of like a different company, but it had, I think, Zildjian made them or something like that. We'll have to get Kelly Ray on to answer that question for us. But I love the sounds of them. Excuse me. And I've been same with the hi-hats. I like this thinner style of cymbals. Something that has a little bit more vocabulary to it, because some of the thicker cymbals I don't get as much vocabulary from. So a little color.
Right, yeah. The thinner ones just cut through a little bit more than some of those heavier, right? And the darkers, right? Like that one there.
Yeah, the thinner the cymbal, the darker the sound, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to cut through. And so what happened was Zildjian had the demand of making thicker cymbals, because there were rock bands out there that were cracking all these thin jazz cymbals, right? So there's the demand of, like, in the 70s, you had I have a ride from the 70s that it's just, it's a nice ride, but it's just too heavy for me, and nothing wrong with that. I remember in the 90s, there was a big influx or demand into these, heavy rides, or earth tone rides, or hand hammered unlaid rides, or super dry ride, with a bell that's from,
size of a car.
Speaking of Will Calhoun's ride from Sabian, that was one of those rides. I was like, dang, you gonna cut through that? You can cut through the fog through that, So, so that's my sound. I like that. I'm not prejudiced against any other brand of cymbals or anything like that. I'm not even an artist for the company Zildjian. Hopefully they'll say, "Oh, thanks for a little, plug there," but it's just what I'm used to, what I love, and
Yeah, I know there's that debate, or not debate, but the lineage of Zildjian and Sabian and the whole things like that. So I get it. So I've been mostly. I've always just bought Sabian, and then just only recently, within the last few years, had picked up some Zildjians. And again, for something for this kit, I was looking for, it was like a crash ride kit, and then some new beats and hi-hats, and where it was a lot thinner than some of the other stuff I had. And again, being more of a rock guy, or that, again, growing up in those times, it was you're a lot heavier, because like you said, much thicker cymbals, you're not gonna warp the shit out of it.
Right. Yeah.
Or break it. Yeah. So
absolutely.
So, Adam, so let me jump back here, and we talked about, you know, the orchestra, the Philharmonic, and some of your education and your history, and let's just quick talk about your composing, because I think that's an interesting piece there. You know, again, just looking up some on the website, and some of your projects that you worked at with the university, and I think one of the interviews, I think it must have been, maybe it was at college, it was an interview talking about how, you know, the Naratu movie that they did, and that you did the composing for, how even instrumental back then with silent movies, right? How music was so important and I think you referenced John Williams, and I think it was a great reference that you talked about the theme, the music for Darth Vader, how it kind of invokes a sense of, you know, feeling, and it's just, you know, to tie those parts in. But how did you get into composing? Because charting things out for songs is one thing, but you're charting things out for everybody and every instrument, right? Yeah. You talk a little bit about that. Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely. Thank you. So I started, my very first thing that I've ever written was a 2-bar snare drum solo called Victory March. And it went 1, 2, 3, and 4. And that was it. And it was in 2/4 time. I always had an interest in creating my own music, because I would hear music in my head, either from stuff that I loved and it was a favorite piece or song. And obviously in the 80s, you couldn't say, I'm going to hit play again on that song unless if you had the album or whatever. But I would hear it in my head. And so around, I guess, probably my sophomore year, I was talking to the band director. How do I write for the band, or how do I write for orchestra? And he talked to me about, you know, transpositioning. And what transpositioning is, you know, if you have a B flat clarinet, you're not, and then you want the sound C, you don't write C. You know, it's just one of those things. And so every instrument has its own transpositioning and stuff. So that was a learning experience. And I remember auditioning for North Texas State University, and auditioning, as a matter of fact, in front of Ed Soph. And I completely failed on that. I didn't even know who Ed Soph was at the time. And I'm sure drummers are going to be like this, you know. But I was very naive. I didn't have those resources while I was going into high school and all those different avenues of learning. And so the only reason why I got in is the composition teacher said that we're letting you in because you have a knack for composing. And I found this very interesting. And I did an orchestral piece in high school that was unfinished or whatever, but it got me into writing. Okay. And while I was at Lindenwood from 93 to 98, I composed like some dance pieces for percussion, you know, so we worked with the dance group and I had percussionists play. One piece was with the choir, Lindenwood University Choir, which we did a song called Bethlehemu, Bethlehem translated as, and it was a bunch of, he went somewhat of a West African drumming feel. So I did that. And so I also wrote a flute solo as a project or whatever called Twisted Ankles. So I've had writing experience. And then when I was about to move to San Diego, I got into electronic music more. And my friends were producing hip hop and a new style at that time that I was first exposed to, which is drum and bass or jungle. I don't know if you've, you know, so that came from England, you know, London, when they sped up the records, you know, the break beats and stuff like they sped it up, and that what created, and then people started producing that or sampling and then producing it. So I did that because really in electronic music, I was thinking to myself, well, if Beethoven had this or Bach had this or Stravinsky had this, you know, these electronical sounds, and there's really no limitation because in their day they were limited to whatever they had, right? And so I was like, I need to pursue this. And then I moved out to San Diego, and drums kind of just keep doing this to me. So I'm always in a battle with drums and composing, right? Until I finally decided to go back to get my degree. And they discovered some other piece that I'd written for this documentary. It was a very low budget documentary that I care not to. It was a work, and that's what it was. And so they said, "Do you mind us using this for the silent film Nosferatu? Because Lindenwood wants to put on a film series to where we're working with the orchestra, the choir, and the media, the film, as one thing, like they did back in the early development of silent film, which, at least a piano or organ player was accompanying that film. But when Nosferatu was debuted, it was with a full orchestra. And so I told them, I said, I'm very flattered that you want to use this music for Nosferatu, but I would prefer to come up with something new, if that's okay with you. And they said, well, yeah, sure. So I had 6 months, 90 minutes, 81 or 2 minutes of film. And all of that had to be covered with music. It's not like a typical film score to where, you have this music and then, okay, here's some dialogue.
Right.
Yeah. So, so this is totally everything. And I did it fortunately I was working with Sibelius, which allowed me to import the film. I used the time code there. So I have what's called diegetic sound, which basically when somebody slams the door, I might have like a bass drum go thump, or whatever the case is. And like even the rooster at the end of the film, that was a trumpet who made that sound. Everybody laughed in the audience for that. So yeah, and that really that challenged me, because I'm going from all this rinky tink stuff to, hey, this is showtime, and you got to deliver. And I also had to deliver on a level to where they could play at. And I thought I did that, but that score was just a little bit too much for them. We had a full choir, we had, full orchestra, tons of percussion. And everybody was constantly playing for 81 2 minutes straight. Wow. And they could not, nobody had clicks either, just the conductor.
And that was something I was thinking about, the sign, reference back to something that Kelly had on one of her videos in the show that she's got, where they talked about the sound that a train made, that the pit and the orchestra would make. It was like clack, 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 and the spring. And so it's very interesting how some of the, and how music is made for film, and even today too. And I when you're talking about Beethoven, and if those guys all had these tools that we had today, the electronics, it came to mind, and you'll laugh when I tell you this, is when I think it was Beethoven, when Bill and Ted, they all ended up back at the mall, and he ended up in the piano store. Yeah.
That's basically what it. Yeah, I'm sure Beethoven would have a heyday. He would be like,
like, wait a minute,
absolutely,
synthesizers and all that stuff that goes with it. Yeah, for sure. So
absolutely.
Well, maybe after the podcast, I want to ask you a question and see if you're interested. And I had an idea that I've been stewing on for about a year. It's Christmas related, and you can tell me what your thoughts of it. And then, like I said, we'll save it so we don't give anything away. But
yeah, sure.
So, all right, Adam, are you ready for In 4 Beats or Less? This is the segment called In 4 Beats or Less. Okay, so
In 4 beats or less. All right.
Yeah. So Kelly probably didn't warn you about this.
No, she didn't.
So it's just, again, it's a segment that is basically, it's not part of the, I know we have our pre-show questionnaire, and this is kind of just a fun kind of quick yes or no thoughts. First thing comes to mind. Don't overthink it, etc. And again, you're supposed to be in 4 beats or less. And our guest last week, I had on Myrna. She's a drummer out of Colorado, and I said sometimes people ask me, it's like, well, what's the tempo, right? Again, 4 beats could be different, and so
I was about to say we're going to do it at 30 beats per minute.
Yeah, right.
So it gives me a little bit more time. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So all right. So first question. Okay, so you've performed. You got a lot of years of performing in different type of venues and different types of settings and so forth. So what's a Spinal Tap moment you've had at a gig?
I didn't spontaneously combust. Let's just say that. It's what I didn't have at a gig. I haven't spontaneously.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So okay. So number 2. So you're a lifelong St. Louis, Missourian, I presume, right?
Born and raised, yeah.
All right. So are you more of a Cardinals fan or a Blues fan?
That's a great question. So I'm a fair weather sports fan. Obviously, I like baseball more. But I also like hockey. They just won the Stanley Cup not too long ago. It was the first time in the history. So I like them both. To be honest with you, but only when they're in the final of the finals.
Right? Yeah, when
Unless
it gets exciting.
I'm taking my kids. Yeah, or I take my kids out to a game, just to experience that,
Right.
But I don't sit there every game and watch every game. I just don't have that type of time.
Right. Yeah, trust me, it's tough being a Dolphins fan right now. They're
Oh.
So, all right. So, number 3. This is part of the orchestra. Playing the kit or just one piece of the percussion item, like we were talking about.
Okay. Kit. That's what I told the union. I said, I'm only kit, so don't get me on xylophone.
Yeah.
Kit. That's in 1 beat or less.
Yeah, there you go. You got it now. You're speeding up now.
Yeah.
All right. So number 4 and last one. What's the one thing that you think makes a good music / drum teacher?
Absolutely. I think it's obviously work ethic, but how to be your own best teacher. And once you learn how to be your own best teacher, you actually start to become your own drum teacher. There's one thing that I tell students: I can lead you up. I ask them, and this is going to go over a little bit, but I ask them, describe what water tastes like. And they go, huh? And I said, no, you teach me what water tastes like. And they're kind of stumped. And I said, until you go down to drink water, you're not going to know what water tastes like. So in the same token, I can give you all the information in the world, but you have to go do the application. You have to digest it and regurgitate it like a cow has seven stomachs, right? Just so to digest that grass. And I know I keep regurgitating a lot of stuff. 8 beats, I think.
No, don't worry. It's not a game show. There's no whammies or
right.
So no, that's fine. That's good. So yeah, that was the in 4 beats or less. So I think one last thing I just kind of wanted to make sure you kind of again plug the website in, and so one of the things you had on there was is maybe an opportunity to let the listeners know about on the site there the benefactors and donations and how important that is, right? So kind of again, you're putting this together. You're again, and no charge for folks to list, to write to get it, but yet anything that can help kind of to continue this for others to really benefit. So I guess how would folks kind of get involved with that to be part?
Right. Well, I did a long time ago. I shut it down, but it was a GoFundMe. I found out that there were other more worthy reasons for GoFundMes, so I didn't want to do that. Mm-hmm. I do have a book coming out that is with the show. It starts in, we talk about it in episode 4. So that's going to be a way that people can help me out. Go buy the book. $10.95. It's an e-download, and you have a PDF there that is at your whatever device you want it on or print it out. If they want to donate, they can contact me, info@learningtodrum.com. And, we can set up something that if you want. I don't do Patreon or page, whatever that is. And I also, I'm not an affiliate for any of those links that I provide when I talk about different drumsticks or pads or anything like that. So really the only revenue source that I have is through this drum book that I have. And, but like I said, if there's somebody out there that really wants to help me out, because we can all use the help, right?
Right.
So, info@learningtodrum.com. You can also follow me on Facebook, like I said, /learningtodrum to find out the other extra goodies that are along with the program with whatever posts that I put out. AdamTevlin.com is a way to go learn more about me, find out more about me if you wanted to. And then also subscribe to the YouTube channel. Okay. I don't have a YouTube /Learning to Drum just yet, but, every subscription does help. So if you can go to the website, learningtodrum.com, you can click on episode season 1. And right there, you get to the YouTube channel, hit subscribe. So you have all the latest and greatest from that.
Excellent. And we'll we'll add all these links into the show notes, and likewise too, Adam. I'm behind on my website stuff that I know because I've been focusing on social.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like website, socials, YouTube, Instagram, all these things. And we do have a Drums and Rums Facebook group besides just a page as well too, and we can promote some things over there. And I'm looking to try to help grow that community and pull folks in that are subject matter experts, or educators, or maybe they're drum manufacturers, or whatever the case may be. So for folks who got questions, hey, here's a the place where you can hit somebody up and ask them that question. And again, I know we didn't talk a whole lot. This has been mostly a drum. This has been a drum podcast, and I know a lot of folks kind of asked the questions like, "Well, drums and rums, I don't get it." A recent guest asked me, he's like, "It sounds like milkshakes and hand grenades, right? How these go together." But again, it's like it's catchy, it rhymes, and this is one of our sponsors here. I'll have to, or for the month here is this is so. This is a rum here that's made here in South Florida, or not made in South Florida, but it's based in South Florida, and it's called Bombarda rum, and the bottle is shaped like a cannon. So I don't know if you can see, but it is shaped like a cannon, a nice little thing. So this is some nice Caribbean blended rum they have, and you go back and check them out. So I appreciate them hooking us up with some free stuff there. So
now I have a question for you. Is that all you drink is rum as far as an alcoholic beverage?
Adam, you're asking me that question on the podcast. I'll answer it afterwards.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
No. Mostly. No. Yeah, mostly. I know occasionally somebody might catch me drinking a beer or somewhere, and I guess it all depends on what the mood is and how. And I guess if what's available at the time, right? So I won't turn down. I won't turn down a drink. I guess this is probably a better way to answer.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely.
So, all right, Adam. So I appreciate it. Again, definitely everyone check out learningthedrum.com, and again, all the links there that Adam had talked about, we'll post it in the show notes. And once we get this video, we'll get up on YouTube and we'll add in more links in there. And again, go out and subscribe to, like Adam said, go out and subscribe to his YouTube channel. Again, there's a lot of great information, and I think one thing I just want to make note of too, Adam, is the videos, right? They're not long, it's consumable amount of videos time, right? It's probably that came out wrong, but what my point is, it's like it's an episode, like watching a Seinfeld episode. It's it's just the right amount of time. You're not watching Ben-Hur, back to reference, right? And it's just 30 minutes or so. It's great. You can watch one and then watch the next one each week, like you said. Every Sunday the new one drops, right. And so definitely check it out there. And
they get a little shorter too.
Okay.
Yeah. So the shortest episode is, I think, right a second under 14 minutes.
Okay.
So it even gets easier. If people are thinking of the first 6-7 weeks, man, half an hour, I don't know about just sitting through all this. I get it,
Yeah.
Get into episode 4. Let's get into the nitty gritty, because if you're not interested in the history or anything, I hope you are. I hope you go back and watch it. But, So totally, we do get shorter.
I'm telling, for all the listeners that are, and again, I got a very wide group that are drummers and rummers and everyone in between. Again, if it's an interesting conversation that hopefully people find that may not be a drummer, but they find it as an interesting conversation. I found it very fascinating, because I've talked about this a lot of times. I think I'm like a closet history, I don't say buff, but kind of like I love the history stuff. And that part in there, you're talking with Don about, how the lineage of all these, greats, how they came from this and that and the tree. And so definitely check that out. I'm not going to tell you which episode. You got to go to the YouTube channel and go search for it, and go into the search bar and say learning to drum. Type in, again, I don't know what's probably the best, Adam, to go to search on there. Go to the website. Go to the website.
Your website.
Yeah. Okay.
And then, because if you type in learning to drum, you get all these, so YouTube hasn't recognized me now since I'm so new in the algorithms. But if you go to my website, learningthedrum.com, season 1, you'll see all the episodes that have been aired so far, and you click on any one of those or the first one, and go subscribe, and you'll be linked in that way.
Yeah, let's get you up to at least that up to, I think, 100 subscribers gets you to the unique URL. So let's get you up there, and then the next big step is 1,000, where I think you actually can start making money from ads.
There you go. That's absolutely. Yeah. No, Paul, this has been a pleasure, and we had a lot of fun. You had a lot of great questions, and I'm very flattered to be on your show. And I wish you and your show to be best of luck. And I'll have your podcast on my page, on Facebook. Excellent. So we'll do some mutual sharing there.
You got it. Again, so make sure to check out this podcast, and then check out the video that we'll post here, and everybody check out learningtodrum.com. So this is Paul. Oh, I almost forgot the last one of the most important parts of the show here. All right, so now that we've made it through, all right, Adam, so welcome to now our newest alum. So we'll be sending this out in the mail to you there. So there's our logo. Again, these are the shirts that only you can only get these on. I guess you'll make your own, I guess. But only the guests have come on now. They're part of the alum there. It's on the back there. It says where the back beats meets the spirits there. So that's our tagline. Awesome. So welcome to the alum now. So
thank you. Yeah. So I just want to say to the audience, as I say this to all my guests or all my viewers, is always remember to keep swinging those sticks.
Excellent. Oh, I love that tagline.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks again, Paul.
You got to have a great night, Adam.
You too. Thanks you again.
Bye. I'd like to thank Adam for coming on and talking about his drumming journey and his new video series, Learn to Drum. Check it out over on YouTube or on his website, learningtodrum.com and adamtevlin.com. Also, I'd like to thank our sponsors for this episode, Bombardo Rum. Check them out at shopbombardorum.com, and also embroidery and so more. Thanks again for joining us on this podcast. I'm Paul, and this is where the backbeats meets the spirits.